My name is Petra Palusova. I'm an architect and a researcher. I study the transformational processes of space and form from the early to late modernism and its contemporary adaptation. I studied architecture at the Bauhaus in Weimar and experienced some of the methods myself and also the real zeitgeist of the school. I'm going to talk about the philosophy of Bauhaus and introduce the Bauhaus thought as a movement. Bauhaus is a term that is known to all of us in the world of architecture, design and art. It was one of the early proponents of the modern movement, representing new ideology, concept and method of design, also a new method of living. It was founded in the year 1919 after Germany's defeat in the war and the fall of German monarchy. The school was active in Weimar from 1919 to 1925, then it moved to another headquarter in Dessau between 1925 and 32, and lastly in Berlin in 1932 to 1933 under the directory of Mies van der Rohe. Bauhaus was born as a result of a Reformation process in the post-World War I. It was active within the time frame of the Weimar Republic and functioned under the new and liberal law that abolished the censorship. It claimed the reformation of life based on modern principles of science, which became omnipresent in the society at that time. Despite the fact that the Bauhaus School, its full name in German Staatliches Bauhaus or the State Bauhaus, was for the most part a teaching institution substantially funded by the state, it was perceived as shocking and rebellious. It was also greatly disturbing to those who were determined to preserve a more traditional form of life imbued with history, nationalism and racial identity. There was a lot of political pressure put on Bauhaus by the growing Nazi movement, which denounced it for its degenerate art. It was due to what they called foreign influences and the impact of the cosmopolitan modernism, which, according to the right-wing oriented party, was meant to lead to the cultural and the racial decline. And due to these disturbances, Bauhaus was forcibly closed in the year 1933. However, despite all that, the representations of the Bauhaus movement persisted in its intentions, and it is one of the reasons why it exerted such a strong influence on modern art, architecture and design. The school formulated a revolutionary educational model which combined and unified art and craftsmanship. It consisted of 3 segments. First, the Vorkurs or the pre-course, which was meant to investigate the personality of the prospective students and their level of creativity. Second was the Formlehre, or study of the form as a design theory. And third was Werklehre, the studio to learn the practical expertise. These were taught by the masters of the form, namely Walter Gropius, László Moholy-Nagy, Wassily Kandinsky, Johannes Itten, Paul Klee, Mies van der Rohe. They represented the zeitgeist of the Bauhaus ideology, and each of them with a different emphasis. Bauhaus functioned as a medium of various forms of isms: expressionism, cubism, futurism, suprematism, constructivism, neoplasticism, functionalism, and neue Sachlichkeit, which translates to new objectivity. The way of creation enabled a radical experimentation in arts. The former preoccupation with emotional expressionism was replaced by the new objectivity. And the next decisive factor contributed to the reputation of the school. It was the growing role of the industrialization and the mass production in the modern world that was on the rise at that time. Bauhaus put an emphasis on connecting the mass production and the individualistic spirit as of merging craft and technology. The most important determinant of the Bauhaus projects was their newness and their authenticity. The conventional thoughts in general were considered to be a villain in students' creativity, Bauhaus was more a synonym of ahistoricism and anti-traditionalism. It rejected all ornamentation, Victorian stylistic eclecticism, or any visual language that represented the bourgeoisie. Even the title of a professor was removed from the school. It also rejected all the metaphysics, spiritualism, or mysticism. There was a brief phase of interest in Eastern spirituality under Johannes Itten, but then it was completely let go. The following director of Bauhaus, Mies van der Rohe, was famous for his quote, "We build no cathedrals. Our time is not lofty, we do not value great soaring leaps, but reason and the real," which was his way of reflecting on this eradication of spirituality or anything that is not related to the realness of the physical form. With the support of the anti-traditionalism, universalism, globalism and internationalism, Bauhaus became a real sore spot for the Nazi party that was on the rise because it was threat to the romantic German identity. And since the designers were using a very universal aesthetic language and rational basic geometric forms, it easily passed the political borders and started to spread internationally. Moreover, it stood for collectivism, classlessness, and the machine-like aesthetics, impersonal industrial version of a human that was on the rise in the world. It also became clear that art cannot be completely detached from people's lives. But based on the modern thought, it was reasonable to include it into daily lives, creating, for example, simple products which would be fit for production, affordable, and which would break the eternal division between arts and crafts. It was also very convenient during this time of rising popularity of socialism and communism, because the modernists wanted to standardize human life in order to achieve more equality and act against the bourgeois individualism because of its application of excess factors and its wasting of precious scarce materials. Besides that, Weimar Republic was also trying to excel at manufacturing products to export in order to successfully compete with countries like England and France, who were much wealthier thanks to their colonial imperialism. We could say that while the outside world was raging after the devastation of the World War I, shocks of class warfare, failed revolution, and the rising power of the right, the Bauhaus was trying to bring the form back to the chaos, and that's why it was so well received. Art in the past, before Bauhaus, was trying to add variety to the mundane and predictable reality, whereas Bauhaus did exactly the opposite, bringing simplicity into the complicated reality and make it more comprehensible. Another reason which could explain the popularity of Bauhaus was its very logical and comprehensive visual dialogue with modernity. It presented the mechanization, the materiality and the form that was tangible, visible, concrete, and which people could relate to. Bauhaus ideologists' aspiration was to rebuild the present, to rewrite the world, and with that to redesign the reality. Its purpose was not only to teach and create new solutions in the field of combined arts and crafts, but also to carry out the process of unlearning of the old and to focus on purification of what they found obsolete. There was this omnipresent sense that return to the basic childlike form and the way of thinking is still possible, and that there is a chance of a new, better world if the old one is removed. Unfortunately, World War II interrupted and skewed these developments. The time of the active Bauhaus movement was very brief, but it was very significant. The school contributed a great amount of novelty to the world of design, but why was the design so influential? It was a combination of factors that created a momentum for Bauhaus to become a success, not only as a school but also as an entire concept, as a basis for modernity. The societal drive during the post-war time, almost a desperate wanting to start anew, fresh and with something else, as the past has been proven to be so painful. It was because Bauhaus fulfilled the society's needs not only on the abstract abstract level, but also it fulfilled the practical and the tangible needs and desires to start a new life that felt uncontaminated, pure, simple, and foremost functional. Some of the designs were not only revolutionary for that time, but over the last century they became timeless, and some of them will surely be familiar even to a non-designer's eye. For example, Marcel Breuer's series of industrial chairs created with metal tubes. The prototype B3, currently known as the Wassily chair, was designed in 1925 and 26, or later the MG5 prototype from 1928. The next example could be a design of a side table, also by Marcel Breuer, later perfected by Michael Tonet, or a prototype of a desk lamp from Wilhelm Wagenfeld and Karl Jakob Jucker from 1924. They're still produced to this day and sold.